A refrigerator killed me in my first world. In my second, I lost a sword fight to a straw dummy. The dummy did not move. It did not have arms. It still defeated me in front of 800 students. My practice sword passed beside its head and pulled me around with it. I spun once, struck the sand with my shoulder, and heard the judges mark my first failure. Then I spoke the easiest fire spell in the academy. A red spark ran down my sleeve and set my left boot on fire. The laughter became louder. For my last test, I had to cross a field containing one trap. I had built the trap myself 10 minutes earlier. I took 3 steps, heard a click, and dropped into my own rope net. I hung upside down while my burning boots smoked beneath me. Even the straw dummy seemed proud. Examiner Derek rose from the judge's platform. He was a broad man with a narrow mouth. His job depended on perfect records, so he loved rules the way a hungry dog loved a locked kitchen. Edrin, he announced, 0 points in sword control, 0 in basic magic, and 0 in field awareness. My name fell down the crystal ranking board. It passed 900, then 1100, and stopped at 1204. Last place. The crowd turned my failure into a festival. A merchant sold 12 paper boots with painted flames before I was cut down. Rovan watched from the front row in silver armor, smiling like a man who had removed the bolts from a bridge. "You made history," he called. "Nobody has failed all 3 tests in one morning." I pulled off my smoking boot and looked at my sword. The balance stone inside the handle had been moved. A thin line of fresh wax marked the screw. The fire card lay beside my foot. One sound rune had been changed from an open curve to a closed one. The mark was tiny. It was also deliberate. Beyond the rope net, the white flag that showed my trap position stood 2 paces from the hole. There were fresh footprints around its base. Before the practical exam, I had held 2nd place and Rovan 3rd. Only 2 students would receive crown contracts. Luma was too far ahead, so he had chosen me. I raised the altered card. This rune was changed. The sword was open too. "A failed student blames his tools," Darek replied. "You should have inspected them." Luma stepped out of the successful line. She wore the blue ribbon for a perfect theory score, and her dark hair was tied so tightly that one loose strand would probably have apologized. "I inspected his sword," she said. "Someone changed it later." Rovan's smile stopped. Darek threatened to freeze every result if she filed a report, including her own. Then he declared the equipment valid. My written score vanished, and the board marked me unfit. That was the true injustice. He erased everything I had earned because admitting sabotage would damage the academy. "Try farming," Rovan said. "Turnips rarely fight back." I had fought a refrigerator and lost. I did not trust turnips. "I accept the score," I said. Darek thought I had surrendered. I had only learned that evidence without power was decoration. The students were no longer laughing together. Some stared at the altered rune. Others looked at Rovan's clean gloves and the wax on my sword. A rumor crossed the field before I reached the equipment table. By the time I collected my coat, half the academy believed I had been framed. The other half believed an examiner could not be wrong because his chair was higher than ours. Luma tried to preserve the card as evidence. Darek sealed it inside an academy box and ordered 2 assistants to carry it away. He called that procedure. Rovan called it the end of the matter. I watched which assistant received the box and which corridor he used. Calm did not mean forgetting. At sunset, the class ceremony began. Gold light meant a crown class. Blue meant military value. Gray meant the academy would remember you only when checking unpaid fees. Luma awakened as a blue star rune mage. Rovan received blue-silver lancer. When I touched the stone, it became gray. 3 names entered my mind. Hero of the 2nd attempt, Master of Adaptation, King of Misfortune. The first 2 were distant evolutions. Only the 3rd opened. The public stone showed King of Misfortune. The courtyard exploded with laughter. Rovan asked if my classmate Rain follow me indoors. Darek ended my room and meal permit at midnight. A calm voice told me the hidden rule. Every genuine failure created a permanent adaptation to its exact cause. My next honest attempt against that obstacle received twice the effective force. False danger gave nothing. One cause gave only one lesson, and the change came after the loss. Death still counted as death. My class did not make failure safe. It made survival valuable. You may reject it and remain classless, Darek said. I accept King of Misfortune. The world saw the worst class in the academy. Luma watched my face and understood that I had chosen it on purpose. She became the first person to look at me as if I might know what I was doing. Students moved away as I left the platform. One touched my gray light and pulled back as if bad luck could spread through a finger. The paper boot merchant offered me a free sample, then changed his mind when his table collapsed. Rovin's friends repeated the class name through the courtyard. Each version became worse. By the gate, King of Misfortune had become Lord of Wet Socks. Darek let the mockery continue because public shame made expulsion easier. Only I had heard the other two names. Hero of the second attempt and Master of Adaptation waited beyond the gray class. I did not know how many failures stood between us. I knew the first three had already been paid for. I entered the unlocked old practice hall. With the moved balance stone, my measured chance of hitting the center mark was 38%. I repeated the failed swing. The blade struck the center and broke the target support. The temporary accuracy had doubled to 76%. When it faded, my permanent accuracy settled at 52. One failure had given me 14 lasting points. That seems financially dangerous, Luma said from the doorway. She held an exact copy of the altered fire card, drawn before Darek sealed the original. I asked her to stand near the water barrel. I placed the altered fire card on the floor. During the exam, my broken spell had produced 6 measures of heat and sent all 6 into my boot. My adaptation protected me from that exact reversed flow. It also doubled the stability of my next attempt. I spoke the same corrupted word. Flame rose from my hand in a straight red line. It struck the iron plate at the far wall and turned a patch of it orange. The measuring crystal beside the plate chimed. 12 measures, Luma whispered. My next cast would return to normal force, but the reversed rune could never redirect my mana into my body in the same way. The burn protection remained at 40% against that pattern. You became stronger because the spell failed, Luma said. Harder to defeat the same way. One cause gives one lesson, and deliberate mistakes give nothing. Luma hit a practice wire. I sensed it from 3 paces instead of 1 and stopped above it. Then Rovin entered with Darek and nearly 60 students. He found a broken target, a glowing iron plate, and Luma beside my trap. What are you doing with him? He asked. Learning, she said. Rovin challenged me under the scholarship rule. If I won, I received 1 day of probation. If I lost, I left immediately. He was ranked 62. I was ranked 1,204. The higher-ranked challenger also owed a deposit of 40 silver. I had 3 copper coins and no room after midnight. I accept. Nearly 60 witnesses formed a ring. 3 clean touches would decide the duel. Rovin drew his silver spear. I will make this educational. Good. Education has been expensive today. He attacked with his famous 3-step thrust. The first step hid his reach. The second pulled the guard aside. The third drove the spear into my chest. I knew the movement from class. Knowing was not enough. The blunt tip struck my ribs and threw me across the floor. The score crystal called 1 point for Rovin. The crowd cheered. Pain spread through my chest. I had failed to read the hidden reach. The adaptation settled behind my eyes. That exact sequence could not deceive my sense of distance again, and my next response to it would receive twice the effective speed. Rovin rolled his spear. Was that your great plan? The first part. He used the same 3 steps. I moved before his second foot touched the floor. My damaged sword slid along the spear, turned its point aside, and touched his shoulder. The crystal called 1 point for me. Nobody cheered. The silence was much louder. Rovin stared at the wooden mark on his silver armor. Then he attacked with a low sweep I had never seen. It took my legs away. I hit the floor, and his spear touched my throat. 2 points for Rovin. My spine hurt. A new adaptation corrected the rhythm of that low sweep. The price of learning remained very real. Darek smiled again. 1 more. Rovin came forward, but he did not repeat either attack. He was frightened now. Fear made him inventive. He used a high feint, reversed the spear, and struck from my blind side. I did not know that technique. I did know the location of his feet. The trap adaptation warned me when his weight crossed a line I could not see. I turned, caught the shaft under my bent guard, and used the doubled stability from my failed fire spell to release a small mana burst through the blade. The impact knocked his spear upward. I touched his chest, 2 points each. The students began whispering. The whispers moved out of the hall and into the courtyard. More people gathered at the doors. The paper boot merchant climbed onto a barrel for a better view. Rovan heard them. He had arranged the exam because he feared losing second place. Now he was tied with the worst student in public. His fear became anger. He raised his spear for the 3-step thrust again. Luma inhaled sharply. Darek shouted, "Finish him!" Rovan took the first step. The second. I had already seen the third. I moved inside his reach. My sword struck the joint of his breastplate, exactly where the silver plates overlapped. The spear passed behind me. Rovan stumbled forward and stopped with the edge of my damaged blade resting against his ceremonial ribbon. The ribbon fell. The crystal called the 3rd point for me. For one breath, nobody moved. Then the ranking board outside flashed. My red unfit mark vanished. My position rose from 1,204 to 876. The system did not place me near Rovan because one duel could not replace an entire exam, but it restored my probation rights. My combat rating rose from 8 to 12. The crowd erupted. Some shouted my name. Others shouted questions. 3 students ran to inspect the score crystal because disbelief was easier when blamed on equipment. The paper boot merchant quietly lowered his price. Rovan looked down at his fallen ribbon. His face had gone pale. "You cheated," he said, "with the sword you altered." Luma held up the wax-marked balance screw. Every eye turned toward Rovan. He opened his mouth, but Darek spoke first. "The duel is valid," the examiner said. He forced each word through his teeth. "Edrin receives 1 day of probation and 40 silver coins." Rovan had wanted witnesses. He received them. Darek placed the coins in my hand before the whole crowd. That was my first income in this world that did not come from carrying boxes or copying notes. 40 silver felt heavier than victory. It meant food, medicine, and one more night with a roof. Bren found me in the dormitory kitchen an hour later. He was a broad-shouldered healing student with gentle hands and no respect for dramatic entrances. "Take off your shirt," he said. "Your ribs look like a badly packed shelf." "You cannot see my ribs through the shirt. I can hear them complaining." Luma arrived with a clay pot from the night market. Steam escaped when she lifted the lid. Inside was thick beef stew with onions, red peppers, and small potatoes that had absorbed the dark broth. Bren cut a round loaf into heavy slices. The crust cracked under his knife. We dipped the warm bread into the stew until it shone with butter and pepper oil. My first spoonful burned my tongue. The system gave me nothing. "Apparently hunger is not an enemy," I said. Bren looked at Luma. "Did he hit his head too?" "Several times," she replied. I paid 4 silver for the food and 5 for Bren's healing paste. 31 remained. Strength, money, and time. All 3 had increased, but none were large enough to waste. Luma sat across from me. She had removed her perfect score ribbon. "Darek knew the equipment was changed," she said. "Yes." "Rovan will not stop." "No." "You sound pleased." I broke another piece of bread. "He has already used 3 methods against me. Repetition is now more dangerous for him than for me." Bren pointed his spoon at my bandaged ribs. "New methods are still dangerous for you. That is why I hired a healer. You paid me 5 silver. You hired half a healer." The warmth of the kitchen settled around us. Outside, students repeated the duel in louder and less accurate versions. In one version, I had defeated Rovan with a spoon. In another, the straw dummy had become my secret master. For the first time that day, I laughed. Then a black envelope slid under the kitchen door. The academy seal burned on its surface. I opened it while Luma and Bren watched. Darek had invoked the probation rule. At sunrise, I would enter the Ember Kennel and defeat an academy flamehound. The beast had a combat rating of 22. My new rating was 12. The trial would be shown live on every crystal in Grey Peak Academy. At the bottom, Darek had added 1 sentence in his own hand. 1 failure would end my enrollment. The calm voice of my class spoke inside my mind. It reminded me that adaptation arrived only after damage. Then it told me the Flamehound had never left a failed student alive. I slept for 3 hours. At dawn, Bren placed 2 fried eggs over a bowl of rice and covered them with black pepper. The yolks ran into the rice when I cut them. Luma brought hot flatbread and a jar of plum sauce. Nobody called it a final meal, which was polite of them. The flamehound has 3 attacks, Luma said. A straight breath, a claw surrounded by fire, and an expanding heat wave. 4, Bren replied. It can also sit on him. That is not an official technique. It weighs 400 pounds. It does not need a certificate. I had spent 10 silver on burn paste and a strong healing potion. 21 remained. If I survived, the official reward was 2 gold coins. If I won quickly, the beast core would be worth another 4. If I died, my budget would finally become simple. The Ember Kennel stood beneath the eastern arena. Its walls were black stone. A crystal wall separated the fighting floor from the audience, and every viewing crystal in the academy carried the same image. More than 1,000 people watched. The empty seats from yesterday had filled. News of my duel had crossed the city before breakfast. Street sellers offered bent wooden swords and paper flame hounds. The boot merchant had changed his sign. It now showed a burning boot kicking a silver spear. Rovan sat beside Darek on the judge's platform. His ceremonial ribbon had been repaired, but the new thread was a different color. Everyone could see the line where my sword had cut it. Darek raised one hand. "This is a standard probation trial," he announced. "The candidate must protect 3 glass markers and defeat the beast. Loss of all 3 markers is failure. Leaving the arena is failure. Assistance is failure." Luma stood behind the healer's barrier with Bren. She pointed at the cage. "That is not the standard flamehound." The creature inside was larger than the records. Red cracks crossed its black hide. 2 chains held its collar, but the 3rd hook hung open. Darek did not look at her. The kennel master certified it. The crystal above the cage showed a combat rating of 22. Then the beast opened its eyes. The number became 24. The audience murmured. Darek's hand remained raised. "Begin." The gate opened. The hound came out like a furnace that had learned to hate furniture. I moved left. Its first breath crossed the arena and melted the sand into a red line. I had planned to test the edge of the flame. That plan vanished when the fire widened twice as far as Luma's notes predicted. Heat struck my right arm. My sleeve disappeared. Skin blistered from wrist to elbow. I rolled behind the first glass marker and drank half the healing potion. The audience made one sound. It was not laughter this time. The pain was sharp enough to turn the arena white. The calm voice told me the breath contained 48 measures of ember heat. I had failed to judge its width. My adaptation reduced the effect of that exact breath pattern by 42%. My next action against it would carry twice the useful force. I could survive one more direct edge, not the center. The hound inhaled again. Rovan leaned forward. I waited until its chest expanded, then ran toward the flame. People screamed from the stands. The second breath touched my adapted arm. It still burned, but it no longer stopped me. I crossed the edge, drove my sword toward the beast's shoulder, and struck black hide. The blade bounced away. My wrist went numb. The hound's claw hit my chest and sent me through the first glass marker. It shattered beneath me. 1 marker lost. The score crystal turned red. Darek smiled down at the arena. I had gained 2 new failures. The hide had defeated my penetration, so my next honest strike against that exact armor would carry twice the cutting force. The claw had hidden its real reach inside the fire around it. That reach could never surprise me again. My ribs had not received the same promise. Bren had repaired them last night, and the hound had submitted a new complaint. I rose before it reached me. The beast swept its burning claw. I stepped 1 finger beyond the true arc. The fire passed over my shirt. My sword struck the same plate on its shoulder. This time, the blade entered. Black blood touched the sand. The hound screamed. The audience answered with a roar. The measuring crystal showed that my first strike had produced 9 measures of penetration. The second produced 18. More important, I now understood the grain of the armor. My future strikes would not keep the doubled force, but they would no longer hit the plates at their strongest angle. The hound backed away from me. A combat beast rated 12 points above me had learned caution after 2 exchanges. Rovan's repaired ribbon twisted in his fist. Then he lifted a silver whistle to his lips. The sound was too high for most people to hear. I saw Luma turn toward him. The hound heard it as well. The red cracks in its hide became white. Its rating jumped from 24 to 27. The 3rd open hook on its collar fell to the floor. "Enrage signal," Luma shouted. Rovan used an enrage signal. Darek struck the control crystal with his palm. Her voice vanished from the broadcast. The audience inside the arena had still heard her. Heads turned toward the judge's platform. Rovan hid the whistle in his glove. The hound ignored me and charged the second glass marker. It had been trained to attack the trial objective when enraged. I ran after it. My speed was lower. I knew I would not reach the marker. That knowledge did not count as failure. The glass exploded. 2 markers lost. The official crystal warned that 1 more would end my place at Grey Peak. The hound turned toward the final marker. My class recognized the real loss. I had failed to intercept its straight charge. The cause was not raw speed. It was the beast's first step, which had hidden the direction of its lunge. The next interception received twice the effective timing. The hound lowered its head. I did not chase it. I ran toward the last marker and stopped 6 paces in front of it. "He gave up!" someone cried. Darek rose from his chair. The beast pushed off the sand. Its first step pointed left. Its real charge went right. I moved before the change. My altered sword entered the wound in its shoulder. I used the hound's speed rather than resisting it. The blade traveled between 2 armor plates and reached the ember core beneath its ribs. Fire burst around us. The crystal wall shook. For a moment, the audience saw only white light. Then the flame cleared. I knelt beside the final glass marker. The hound lay across the sand, its nose 1 hand from the glass. My sword remained inside its chest. The last marker was unbroken. The score crystal rang. My combat rating rose from 12 to 20. The number stayed in the air for everyone to see. Nobody spoke until the hound released 1 last cloud of smoke. It smelled like burned wool and bad decisions. Then the eastern arena shook with noise. Students climbed onto benches. The same people who had called me unfit shouted my name. The city crystals carried the result into shops, kitchens, and guard stations. Before I reached the exit gate, 2 messengers had already arrived with offers to buy the beast core. Rovan tried to leave the judge's platform. Luma blocked the stair. She held out her hand. "The whistle. You cannot search me." "Correct." Bren stepped beside her. "I can. I am the assigned medical officer. That glove may contain an object dangerous to your health." "A whistle is not dangerous." Rovan realized his mistake too late. The people nearest the platform began laughing. He had admitted what was inside the glove. Darek came down to the arena before the laughter could spread farther. "The trial is complete," he said. Academy beasts and their cores remain Academy property. Edrin receives the standard 2 gold reward after repair costs. 2 assistants pulled my sword from the hound and removed the ember core. It was the size of an apple and bright enough to throw red light across their faces. 4 gold walked away in their hands. The repair costs for 1 broken marker and damaged sand came to 3 gold. Darek gave me nothing. That was a genuine loss. The voice of my class identified the exact cause as an ownership clause applied after an unauthorized threat increase. The words of the rule did not enter my mind. I received no magical knowledge of law. I simply could no longer overlook the same trap in the same agreement. My next claim against it would carry twice the effective weight. I asked Darek to repeat his decision for the broadcast. He looked at the cheering crowd and misunderstood my calm again. "The core belongs to Grey Peak Academy," he said loudly. "The candidate is responsible for all damage. His reward is reduced to 0. "Thank you." I walked to the rule pedestal beside the gate. Every arena had one so students could confirm official terms before a match. Darek had written the probation order himself. His seal shone beneath the final paragraph. I read the relevant sentence aloud. When an authorized official introduces an unlisted hazard that raises a trial by 3 combat points or more, all repair costs transfer to that official. The candidate receives triple reward and full ownership of recovered material. The arena became quiet again. Darek's face lost color, 1 layer at a time. "The beast began at 22, he said. Its natural rating changed. The broadcast recorded 24 before the gate opened and 27 after Rovan used the whistle. Luma placed the silver whistle on the evidence stone. Bren had removed it from Rovan's glove under the medical safety rule. The stone recognized the kennel mark. The control crystal replayed the moment Rovan raised it. This time, Darek could not silence Luma's voice. Every viewing crystal in the academy showed Rovan's hand. Then it showed Darek striking the broadcast control. The crowd reacted in waves. First came surprise, then anger. Then the particular happiness people felt when an important man was caught by his own paperwork. The paper boot merchant began taking orders for silver whistles. Darek had to announce the corrected reward himself. I received 6 gold coins. The assistants returned the ember core. One merchant offered 4 gold for it before Darek finished speaking, but I kept it. A resource that could strengthen fire equipment was worth more than a quick sale. My remaining 21 silver had become 6 gold, 21 silver, and 1 rare core before noon. The ranking crystal changed next. Protecting one marker against a rating of 27 gave more points than the standard trial. My name climbed from 876 to 211. People repeated the number throughout the arena. Yesterday, students had needed the bottom of the board to find me. Now they had to look near the top quarter. Rovan stood beneath his own replay. His family crest flashed on the whistle. He could not blame a servant or a stranger. "You made the hound stronger," I said. "Thank you." He looked as if I had slapped him with the rulebook. The academy guards removed his silver ribbon and suspended him from combat practice pending review. His rank fell below 300. Every movement appeared on the public crystal. Darek remained an examiner, but the crowd no longer became quiet when he raised his hand. That loss of authority frightened him more than punishment. Bren treated my arm in the infirmary. The burn paste smelled of mint and whetstone. Healing did not erase pain. It reduced the damage from dangerous to expensive. "You have adapted to one breath pattern," he said. "If the next beast breathes blue fire, run." "That was my plan before you said it." "Good. I enjoy being paid by living people." Luma sat beside the bed with the ember core between her hands. Red light moved across her face. "You ran into the fire," she said. "I ran through the edge. That distinction will comfort your missing sleeve." She was angry because she had been afraid. I understood, so I did not make a joke. "I knew the measured heat and carried a potion," I said. "If the center had turned toward me, I would have retreated. A useful failure still needs a survivable price." Luma looked down. "I have never cast my strongest shield. Its success rate is 80%. That is high. It means 1 attempt in 5 can fail." For her, one failure was not information. It was a crack in the identity everyone had built around her. I did not tell her to be brave. Brave was often a word used by safe people watching someone else take the hit. "Then save it for a failure worth paying for," I said. That evening, we ate in a small shop across from the academy. The owner roasted pepper chicken until the skin became dark and crisp. He served it with buttered potatoes, honey carrots, and a bowl of cold cucumber slices. Bren poured the sauce over everything and claimed this was a healing method. People at the other tables kept looking at me. 2 guards asked for my name. A group of younger students requested copies of my training notes. The owner refused our money because the crystal broadcast had filled his shop at noon. My status had bought dinner before I understood that status could be spent. Luma lifted her cup of sweet tea. "To one surviving marker." Bren lifted his. "To the unofficial technique of not being sat on." I touched my cup to theirs. A messenger entered before I drank. He carried the tournament bracket, sealed by Derek. My probation had been approved, but Derek had invoked a verification rule. The next morning, I would fight 7 seated students without a full rest period. One loss would prove my class unstable and remove me from Grey Peak. The city arena had already sold 4,000 seats. The first 6 names belonged to specialists in lightning, frost, sound, poison, illusion, and heavy weapons. The 7th name belonged to Halden, the undefeated academy champion. At the bottom of the bracket, Darek had written the prize: 30 gold coins and a crown sponsorship worth 5 gold every week. Then the ember core in Luma's hands cracked. Something inside it whispered my name. The whisper came again after midnight. Black smoke rose from the cracked ember core and formed one word over Luma's bowl of salt: candidate. The powder inside was gate ash from failed graduation trials. Only a dean or senior examiner could obtain it. Darek had prepared the hound to grow stronger. We sealed the core in Bren's mana-proof bread tin. The bread began whispering too, so he threw it away with visible regret. At sunrise, the city arena was already full. 4,000 people surrounded the fighting floor. Thousands more watched through crystals. Vendors sold flamehound masks and second-attempt tea, which was ordinary lemon water at twice the price. My name stood at the bottom of the tournament board beneath 7 opponents. Darek sat in the chief judge's chair. He had covered yesterday's control crystal with a new silver case. A guard stood beside it, which was useful. Everyone now knew exactly which object Darek did not want touched. The visible prize was 30 gold and a crown contract worth 5 each week. I spent 3 of my 6 gold on healing supplies and a reinforced sword. My money fell before the first bell. My chance of surviving improved. Darek addressed the arena. This gauntlet will determine whether an unstable gray class may remain among trained students. Edrin must win every match. His opponents may rest, he may not. The audience booed. Darek looked surprised. 2 days earlier, the same crowd had laughed when he called me unfit. Authority changed slowly. Public taste changed before lunch. The first opponent entered with a copper spear. His name was Olan, and lightning moved around his boots. "I have no quarrel with you," he said quietly. "Darek promised me 10 ranking places if I win. Then make him pay for them." The bell rang. Olan crossed the floor in a white flash. I saw his spear move and still failed to bring my guard down in time. Lightning entered my shoulder. My arm locked. The blunt point touched my chest. 1 point for Olan. The crowd groaned. The adaptation arrived through the pain. His lightning did not travel through the spear. It jumped from the metal ring on his rear boot and used the spear as a false signal. That exact current had delayed my muscles by 3 breaths. It would never hold them for more than 1 again. My next response to it received twice the timing. Olan flashed forward a second time. I stepped behind the real source before the light reached his spear. My blade touched the ring on his boot. The current grounded through the arena floor, and Olan landed on his back with both legs smoking. I placed my sword against his chest. The arena became silent. Then someone in the upper seats shouted, "It only worked once." The words moved through the audience faster than Olin's lightning. I won the next 2 points without being touched. Olin bowed and left on his own feet. He was not humiliated. Darek was. The examiner's promised 10 places had lasted less than 2 minutes. Bren met me at the rest gate and poured a blue potion over my shoulder. "You have 8 minutes," he said. The bracket promised 15. He pointed at the arena clock. Darek had started the next countdown before my match ended. That was not yet a failure. It was a warning. The first frost chain froze my ankle. The second held me for less than half the time. When its shape changed, it caught me again. The crowd understood that every new method could still win once. They began counting aloud. "Once!" they shouted when an attack caught me. "Not twice!" they shouted when I escaped. The first sound wave erased 6 seconds of memory. The repeat stole only 2. A higher note was new and made my ears bleed, but I forced both notes to interfere and won. Poison slowed my left hand once. I recognized the bitter smell on the repeat. A new poison weakened my knees until Bren's antidote acted. Mirror images fooled my eyes, then copied the sand when I adapted. I found the real body by its breathing. People stopped watching my weapon. They watched my eyes, for the instant pain became understanding. My 6th opponent carried a stone hammer wider than his chest. He did not use tricks. His first strike broke my reinforced sword and drove me to one knee. The audience shouted, "Once!" He smiled. "I only need new angles." He was correct. Each hammer strike came from a different direction. The second tore open my side. The third numbed my right leg. He did not repeat himself, and my adaptations could not protect me before the damage. For the first time that day, Darek looked comfortable. The hammer fighter raised both hands for a downward blow. I had never received that attack. I threw the broken half of my sword at his face. He blocked by instinct. The hammer followed the same low path that had numbed my leg. That path had already taught me its lesson. I stepped through it and touched his throat with my damaged exam sword. The crowd shouted the final point before the judge. 6 victories. My combat rating had risen from 20 to 29. Lightning resistance against Olin's current measured 31%. My recovery from the first sound pattern had fallen from 6 seconds to 2. My body recognized 2 poison families, 3 illusion errors, and 5 heavy weapon angles. I had used both potions. Blood soaked my shirt, and Halden had not entered. Darek stood. The verification must continue without delay. Bren demanded my promised 15 minutes. Darek pointed to the clock, but 4,000 witnesses shouted that it had begun early. An old woman rang a kitchen bell and told him to learn subtraction. The control crystal showed Darek's seal starting the clock 7 minutes and 12 seconds too soon. The arena inhaled, then the noise struck him like a physical object. He restored my rest in public. Bren brought bandages. Luma held a cup of salted honey water when my hand could not. "You can stop," she said softly. "Then I lose everything. You already proved the class works." That was not the rule Darek chose. Her eyes moved to my blood. "Rules are expensive for you. Only the first time." She did not smile. Halden entered in repaired iron armor and the red scarf of the Forge District. He had won 32 matches without a loss. The prize would save his family forge, so he had a reason to fight harder than pride. "He offered me 10 gold before the match," Halden said so the nearby crystals could hear. "I refused the money. I did accept the new armor. My family needs the tournament prize." "So do I said. "Good. I did not want to hit a martyr." We touched blades. The bell rang. Halden gave me nothing familiar. His first strike released a wave of force through the floor. It lifted me into the air and scored before I landed. His second divided into 3 shadows, each moving sand correctly. I blocked the wrong one. His third changed weight halfway through the swing. My guard dropped under the sudden load. 3 points for Halden. The audience had stopped counting. Each attack was new. Halden lowered his blade. "You learn quickly. I prepared 7 lessons. I can afford 4 more." That made him grin. His fourth attack sent a narrow line of heat along the blade. It was not the hound's fire. It burned through my guard and touched my shoulder. 4 points. 1 more would end the match. Darek leaned over the judge's rail. Rovan watched from a lower seat without his ribbon. Hope returned to both their faces. Halden came for the 5th point. He used a simple horizontal cut. I knew simple attacks could hide the worst changes. I stepped back. My heels slid. The arena floor had become smooth beneath me. A thin mana rune shone under the sand. I fell, and Halden's blade stopped a hair from my neck. The point crystal began to light. Luma shouted from the barrier. The floor was altered. Halden looked down. He saw the rune and pulled his blade away before touching me. "I will not take that point," he said. Darek struck his desk. "The attack forced the fall. The point is valid." The adaptation settled through my ankle. The rune had removed friction only beneath my rear foot. That exact change could not take my balance again. More important, the mana carried Darek's control signature. I pressed my palm to the floor. The next attempt against the forged footing carried twice the effective stability. The hidden rune flared blue around my hand. Every crystal in the arena displayed the signature tied to it. Darek's name appeared above the floor. The audience read it together. Halden turned his sword toward the judge's platform. "Did you place this?" Darek's voice failed before his answer did. The chief guard froze the score at 4 points to 0 and ordered the rune removed. Halden refused a replacement point. The match continued. Now I had survived his first 4 lessons. His force wave could no longer lift me. His 3 shadows could no longer hide the breathing body. My guard recognized the changing weight. My damaged sleeve endured the narrow heat long enough to close distance. I scored 4 times. The arena counted each one. 4 points each. Halden still had 3 new attacks. I had strength for perhaps 1 clean defense. He raised his blade, then looked at the ember core in Luma's hands. Black smoke pressed against the glass container. "That is gate ash," he said. "My armor contains the same powder. Darek told me it was strengthening dust." The new iron plates across his chest began to glow. The ash fed on the force of our failed strikes. His armor rating climbed from 35 to 40, then 43. Halden tore at the straps. They would not open. Darek had turned him into the final hazard. "End the match," Luma shouted. Darek lifted both hands. The equipment was accepted before entry. Continue. Halden's armor pulled his body forward. His next swing was not his own. I failed to stop it. The blade entered my side and drove me across the scoring line. The crystal waited for the weapon to touch my body a second time before awarding a point. Halden fought his own arm. Sweat ran down his face. "Move!" he forced out. I had already received the cause. The ash controlled him through 3 points where the new armor touched old scars. My next attempt to break that control carried twice the useful force. I moved toward him instead of away. His blade cut my coat. My damaged sword entered the first armor joint. It did not strike flesh. It cut the black thread of ash beneath the plate. I turned around his second swing and cut the next thread. The third ran behind his neck. Halden dropped his weapon and lowered his head. My sword touched the final thread. The ash burst out of his armor in a dark cloud. The ember core in Luma's container answered. Both clouds rushed toward the control platform and formed a line of smoke around Darek's sealed case. The whole arena saw where the power had come from. Halden fell to one knee. I caught his shoulder before he struck the floor. Then he placed 2 fingers against his own chest. "Valid touch," he said. The crystal awarded my 5th point. The arena exploded. My name rose to 7th place on the Academy board. My combat rating climbed from 29 to 34. The prize chest opened, and 30 gold coins rolled into the payment tray. The crown contract lit with my name. People stood on every level of the arena. Forge workers waved red scarves for Halden. Students shouted second attempt until the words became one sound. The old woman rang her kitchen bell so hard that its handle broke. Darek tried to leave. The chief guard blocked him. The public evidence crystal replayed the early clock, the altered floor, the gate ash inside Halden's armor, and the matching ash from my flamehound. Darek's seal appeared on every authorization. He had wanted 7 public failures. The city received 4 public crimes. Grey Peak's senior judges removed his examiner badge. Roven's suspension became a formal expulsion from the combat program because his whistle had begun the chain of evidence. Darek looked at me while the guard took his silver case. "You destroy everything that gives you a chance," he said. "No," I replied. "You keep using the same method." The crowd heard me. That was the last thing they heard from Darek before he was led beneath the arena. I left with 33 gold and 21 silver, 1 damaged sword, 1 cracked ember core, and a contract worth 5 gold each week. 2 equipment merchants offered free armor if I wore their marks. A city paper changed my name from worst student to hero of the second attempt. I had not earned that class evolution yet. The title still spread through Grey Peak before sunset. Bren treated me in a private room paid for by the arena. He closed the wound in my side, wrapped my shoulder, and ordered 6 hours of rest. Luma ignored him and brought dinner after 1. The dumplings were filled with beef, green onion, and hot broth. We bit small holes in them and drank the soup before eating the soft dough. Bren added red pepper until his bowl looked dangerous. Halden joined us with his younger brothers and a basket of sweet-fried twists from the Forge District. Nobody discussed rankings for almost 10 minutes. It was the calmest part of my week. Luma sat beside me rather than across the table. Her shoulder touched mine whenever she reached for tea. "I knew the floor rune was wrong," she said. "I almost stayed silent because I was not completely certain. But you spoke." My voice shook. The rune did not care. She looked at me, then laughed once. It was a small sound, but it surprised everyone at the table more than my tournament victory. The door opened. Dean Mavic entered with 12 Academy guards. He was a thin, older man in white robes. I had seen him only in portraits. In those paintings, he looked wise. In the room, he looked tired enough to resent anyone who still had hope. "Edrin," he said, "your class is under investigation as an illegal adaptive curse." 2 guards placed seals on my prize chest and crown contract. The 30 gold vanished behind gray light. Another guard touched the city ranking crystal. My name disappeared from 7th place. Every public crystal changed at the same moment. Unranked, assets frozen, tribunal at dawn. Mavic faced the witnesses around our warm table. "Darek acted alone," he said. "Tomorrow, the Academy will prove that Edrin stole the abilities of every opponent he faced." The voice of my class spoke beneath the shocked silence. My money, status, and earned victory had been taken by an authorized falsehood. It confirmed a genuine failure. At dawn, 6 judges voted to expel me. They did it before asking my first question. The tribunal filled Grey Peak's central hall. Students stood along the walls. Citizens watched through city crystals, and merchants crowded the front steps. Dean Mavic sat beneath the Academy crest with a white mirror floating at his side. My place on the ranking board remained empty. My 30 golden crown contract waited inside a sealed chest behind him. Luma, Bren, and Halden sat at the witness table. Roven and Darek were absent. Mavic called that proof of fairness. "Edrin's class does not learn from failure," he told the hall. It steals the successful response of the person who defeats him. The white mirror showed Olin striking me with lightning. A black thread appeared to leave his spear and enter my body. The image changed to the frost chains, then the sound hammers. Each time, another dark thread entered me. People near the walls stepped away. Mavic knew fear needed a picture more than it needed truth. 6 opponents reported weakness after facing him, he continued. If this curse grows, every student in Grey Peak becomes his food. Olin stood among the witnesses. I reported sore legs because I grounded my own lightning. My power is unchanged. The mirror did not show his statement. Mavic turned to me. Can you prove you did not take their strength? I could describe my class. I could repeat the measurements. None would prove where the improvement came from. Not with the evidence you control, I said. The hall reacted badly. Honest limits sounded like guilt when spoken beneath a judge. 6 white stones lit on the tribunal table. 1 remained dark. Expulsion carried by 6 votes to 1. My dormitory key cracked. The frozen chest changed from gray to black, marking permanent seizure. The academy crest burned away from my coat. This loss was larger than the one Mavic had taken the night before. It was also complete. The adaptation formed. The exact cause was a forged mana resonance presented through an authorized mirror. My class did not give me the truth. It made the same false pattern unable to fool my senses twice. My next honest challenge against it received twice the effective clarity. I looked at the mirror again. The black thread leaving Olin's spear pulsed every 8 heartbeats. So did the thread from the frost chain. Real mana did not copy a heartbeat. A recorded layer did. Replay the first image, I said. Mavic lifted the dismissal seal. The ruling is complete. Academy Code allows one immediate challenge when new evidence comes from the ruling itself. Luma placed the rulebook on the witness table. She had marked the sentence with blue ink. Mavic's eyes hardened. You prepared this. I read it, she said. That remains legal. Laughter moved through the students. It was quieter than the arena, but Mavic heard every part of it. He ordered the image replayed. I counted aloud. At the 8th heartbeat, the black thread pulsed. At the 16th, it pulsed again. The city crystals enlarged it. People began counting with me. A copied resonance, Luma said. The same recording was placed over every match. Mavic touched the mirror. The image vanished. Then every public crystal went dark. The central doors opened behind the crowd. A woman walked into the hall wearing an academy uniform that had gone out of style a century earlier. Dust covered her gray coat. An old graduation chain was wrapped around her wrist like a broken shackle. Her face looked no older than 25, but her eyes made Mavic appear young. You always turn off the crystals before the interesting part, she said. Mavic stood so quickly that his chair fell. Nessa. The woman looked at him. Still Dean Mavic? That is a very long punishment for everyone else. The hall became silent. Every Grey Peak student knew Nessa's name. She had entered the graduation trial 100 years earlier and never returned. Her portrait hung in the memorial wing. The woman in the portrait had the same face. Nessa raised an iron key and inserted it into the old control post beside the doors. The dark crystals came alive. Instead of the tribunal crest, they showed an underground room filled with shelves. Thousands of sealed records covered the walls. The Academy mirror uses the archive beneath this hall, Nessa said. If you want the original evidence, open the original room. Mavic's guards moved toward her. She sighed. I have been killed 411 times. Please decide whether you want to make that number less round. The guards stopped. Bren whispered, 411 is not round. Do not correct the immortal woman, Luma whispered back. Nessa heard them. One corner of her mouth moved. Mavic placed both hands on the judge's table. That archive is sealed for public safety. Opening it weakens the final gate. Then come with us, I said. Explain the danger while everyone watches. He refused. The refusal reached every city crystal. I was already expelled. I had no status left for him to threaten. The cause he had used once could not stop me in the same way again. Nessa led us through a narrow door behind the tribunal crest. Luma carried the Ember Core. Bren carried his medical case. Halden remained in the hall to make sure Mavic could not quietly dismiss the crowd. The stairs descended below the academy. At the first landing, a silver fog filled the passage. It showed me an image of Rovan defeating me at the exam, then another of the Flamehound killing Luma behind the barrier. I knew both were false. My adapted senses still reacted too slowly to a new illusion. I stepped toward Luma's image. The floor opened. I caught the edge with one hand. Poisoned spikes waited below. One illusion had defeated my direction. My next attempt to cross it received twice the effective clarity. The false Luma repeated the same frightened movement. This time, I noticed that her shadow pointed toward the wrong lantern. I pulled myself up and walked through her. The students in the tribunal watched through Nessa's crystal key. When the false flamehound charged, people screamed from a safe distance. I ignored its teeth and followed the true shadow to the next stair. The fog failed to turn me twice. At the second landing, darts struck from the wall. Bren knocked one aside. Another entered my leg. The poison was not one I had met in the tournament. My muscles became heavy. I failed to reach the closing door before it sealed. The adaptation recognized both losses. My body began resisting that exact poison, and the door's delayed hinge could no longer hide its closing rhythm. Bren used his last strong antidote. That cost 8 silver. Add it to Mavic's bill. I like institutional medicine. On the next attempt, I moved before the hinge sounded. Luma and Bren crossed. Nessa remained behind until the door passed through her body and cut her in half. She looked down at herself. This is why I dislike old architecture. Black threads pulled her together on the other side. Nobody watching laughed until she did. The archive door waited at the bottom. It had no handle, only 7 white mirrors. Each showed a different version of me opening the lock. 6 versions died. The 7th stood still. I copied it. Nothing happened. That was my failure. The still image had not shown inaction. It had shown trust. I looked at Luma. The lock needs a spell with a failure chance. Her face changed. Nessa touched the broken chain around her wrist. It was built to reject perfect patterns. Mavic's family feared anyone they could not predict. Luma knew hundreds of safe opening runes. None would work. Her strongest star shield had an unstable center and a 1 in 5 chance to collapse. Turned inward, the same pattern could disrupt the mirrors. I have never cast it, she said. Then this is not practice. The risk is real. That does not help. No, but we are here. She raised both hands. Blue lines formed between the mirrors. 4 points became stable. The 5th shook. The spell collapsed. Glass light struck Luma and threw her into me. The archive stayed closed. She stared at the door. Her first failure had happened in front of the entire academy. Nobody laughed. Students watching through the crystal began calling her name. Luma stood again. Her hands still shook, but now the fear had already happened. It could no longer threaten her with being first. Again, she said. The second star shield opened across all 7 mirrors. The archive door broke inward. The tribunal hall erupted. Luma had no adaptation class. She received no magical bonus from failure. She had only corrected the unstable center with knowledge from the first attempt. That made her success belong entirely to her. Inside the archive stood 1,000 black books. Each held the official record of a failed graduation attempt. The oldest was nearly 1,000 years old. The newest carried fresh ink from the previous winter. Many names had never appeared in the public memorial. Most belonged to low-ranked students listed elsewhere as transfers, accidents, or voluntary withdrawals. Nessa found her own book. Candidate 824. Cause of failure. Refusal to abandon injured teammates. Result? Bound to the final gate as a living repair mechanism. I did not receive immortality, she said. I received a job with terrible hours. Luma opened the records beside it. Every failure produced measurements: heat tolerance, bridge pressure, monster behavior, seal decay. Grey Peak had sent one candidate after another into the same impossible trial and sold the data to the Crown Hero office. The cracked ember core floated out of her hands. Black smoke moved from book to book. It whispered the same word each time: candidate. The Hound had been fed ash made from these records. Mavic entered the archive with the judges and guards behind him. He no longer tried to stop the broadcast. If Grey Peak refused, he said, the Crown would move the trial beneath the city. One candidate each year kept the gate stable and kept 60,000 civilians alive. I hid the records because panic would close the academy. Closure would kill more people. His motive was not money alone. That made the choice worse, not better. He had found a reason large enough to place on top of every individual name. Did the candidates know? I asked. Mavic looked at the books. No. The word crossed every crystal. Then they did not choose the price. You chose it for them. Mavic's face tightened. And what would you choose, Edrin? One life or a city? I would begin by telling the person holding the knife. Nessa placed her book on the evidence stand. The other records rose after it. 1,000 names appeared on Grey Peak's ranking board, replacing the false memorial list. The reaction began in the tribunal hall and spread into the streets. Families recognized missing children. Former students recognized classmates. The academy guards lowered their weapons. 2 judges removed their white badges and placed them on the floor. Mavic tried to activate the mirror defense. The same forged black threads entered the archive. They could not fool me twice. I cut the control line with my damaged sword. The doubled challenge force traveled through the false resonance and returned it to its source. Every mirror around Mavic showed his own graduation record. He had never entered the trial. His family had marked him as successful to preserve control of Grey Peak. The crowd saw the empty result beneath his name. Mavic had called me a false graduate while standing on a certificate with no attempt behind it. He closed his eyes. The judges voted again. This time, all 7 stones removed him from authority. My expulsion was cancelled. My combat rating rose from 34 to 43 after surviving the archive defenses. My name returned to the board in first place among active graduation candidates. The sealed chest opened. My 30 gold and crown contract were restored. Grey Peak's law added 100 gold for false seizure under a public tribunal. After paying Bren's medicine and the arena expenses, I held 132 gold and 13 silver. Mavic had to read the corrected ruling before the same audience that heard his accusation. Edrin did not steal any ability, he said. The evidence was forged under my authority. People outside repeated the sentence until it reached the academy roof. That was his public defeat. No joke could make it larger. Night found us in the old archive kitchen. Nessa had not eaten fresh food in decades, so Bren treated the meal as a medical emergency. He boiled thick noodles in chicken broth with garlic and red pepper. Luma fried eggs until the edges became crisp. I sliced green onions and roasted strips of beef over a small flame. Nessa ate 3 bowls without pausing. Immortality creates hunger, she said. It does not create cooking. Luma leaned against my shoulder. Her hands were red from the failed shield. 1 attempt in 5, she said. You paid it. I hated it. That is allowed. She placed her hand over mine on the table. Neither of us moved it. For a little while, the academy above us sounded warm rather than afraid. Then horns sounded over Grey Peak. The roof crystals showed a white carriage descending from the clouds. Crown guards surrounded it. Savar, chief examiner of the Crown Hero Office, stepped onto the academy tower. He wore no armor. He did not need it. The royal seals on his coat could close a school, erase a class, or order an execution. Savar entered the archive and studied the 1,000 books. Mavic had no authority to restore your rank, he told me. At dawn, you will enter the 1,000-fall trial. If you pass, the Crown will recognize every result. If you refuse or fail, your class will be removed, and this archive will be burned. Nessa's broken chain tightened around her wrist. Nobody has passed, Luma said. That is why the result will be final, Savar replied. The books around us opened at the same time. The voice of my class counted 1,000 verified failures tied to one continuous trial. For the first time, it did not call them losses. It called them previous attempts. Before sunrise, Bren cooked rice porridge in the archive kitchen. He added butter, soft eggs, and chopped green onions. Luma warmed flat cakes on an iron plate until brown circles appeared on both sides. Nessa covered hers with plum jam, rolled it into a tube, and ate it faster than dignity allowed. I bought 1 crown healing potion for 12 gold. It was the most expensive thing I had ever swallowed. It tasted like metal and sour cherries. I entered the morning with 120 gold, 13 silver, 3 ordinary potions, one damaged sword, and a combat rating of 43. Bren checked every bandage. The crown potion can close one wound that should kill you. It cannot replace your head. I will keep that attached. You said the same thing about your sleeve. Luma tied a blue cord around my sword hand. Her fingers remained there after the knot was finished. Come back, she said. It was not advice. It was the only order she had ever given me that I wanted to obey. We walked to the arena through streets that had not slept. Bakers handed out warm rolls shaped like broken swords. Children wore gray cloth crowns and deliberately dropped wooden balls so they could catch them on a second bounce. Their parents kept those lessons far from stairs and open fire. People called my name from windows. Others called the names revealed in the archive. The city was not celebrating only one candidate. It was welcoming 1,000 forgotten students back into public memory. At the arena gate, the paper boot merchant gave me a new pair of real boots. He had stitched a tiny flame onto each heel. Free advertising, he said. If they burn, I own your shop. Then please avoid dragons. The Thousand Fall trial opened beneath the city arena. Grey Peak had never seen a larger crowd. Every seat was full. Citizens packed the roofs around it. Crown crystals carried the image to the capital and every military academy in the kingdom. More than 60,000 people watched inside the city. Savar announced that another 500,000 watched elsewhere. One day earlier, my name had been erased from one school board. Now the kingdom waited to see me die. Savar stood before the final gate. White metal covered its surface. 1,000 narrow marks ran around the frame, one for each official failure. The former dean sat under guard. Darek and Rovan had been brought as witnesses. Halden stood with the forge workers. Olin and the other tournament fighters filled the student section. Nessa waited beside Luma and Bren behind the trial barrier. Nobody could later claim the result happened in secret. Savar raised a royal seal. The trial has 4 stages, he said. The candidate must cross the falling bridge, pass the white furnace, defeat the hollow lion, and open the final seal. No person may enter after him. No outside spell may cross the barrier. If Edrin retreats, his class will be removed. What is the reward? I asked. The question moved through the crowd. Some laughed from surprise. Savar did not. 300 gold, the final gate key, a royal combat license, and recognition as Grey Peak's first true graduate in 1,000 years. Please state my current class. His eyes narrowed. King of Misfortune. The title passed through every crystal. The world had laughed when it first appeared in gray light. I wanted the world to remember who entered this gate. Savar lowered the seal. The doors opened. Stone pillars hung over a black distance. There was no floor between them. Gravity changed with every step. The archive told me that 213 candidates had fallen here. Their failures waited inside my class like unopened letters. I accepted the first. For one heartbeat, I felt an unknown boy fall upward and strike the ceiling. The echo carried only part of his pain, but part was enough to drive me to one knee. I learned the exact reversal that had killed him. I accepted another. A woman stepped on a pillar that turned sideways. My ankle felt it break. The third echo ended with darkness before the candidate understood the cause. I stopped. 1,000 adaptations were ready. My mind could not survive receiving them like a pile of books dropped from a tower. I needed the right failures, not all failures. The first pillar pulled left. I used the boy's correction and crossed it. The second tried to turn beneath me. The woman's failed step showed the safe edge. People in the arena saw my body shake after each echo. Nessa explained what was happening to the broadcast. The crowd stopped treating the old records as numbers. Each safe step had once been a person's last mistake. At the middle of the bridge, gravity vanished. I jumped too late and floated beyond the next pillar. That failure belonged to me. My fingers caught the lower edge. The black distance pulled at my legs. My damaged shoulder began to open. The audience watched me hanging from one hand. Savar looked at the trial clock. Retreat is still possible. That direction is farther, I said. My adaptation corrected the delay between lost gravity and movement. My next attempt received twice the force. I released the edge, kicked against empty air at the exact moment gravity returned, and landed on top of the pillar. The arena roared. I crossed the final distance after accepting 17 of the 213 bridge failures. When my boots touched the far platform, the first mark on the gate became gold. My combat rating rose from 43 to 48. The white furnace opened ahead. There was no wood and no coal. Pale fire filled a corridor 200 paces long. The archive held 284 failures from that flame. My protection from the hound meant almost nothing. This fire burned mana before skin. I accepted 6 echoes. The first candidate had raised a water shield. The flame turned it to steam inside his lungs. The second wore enchanted armor. It heated until the metal entered her body. The third ran and gave the fire more air. I removed my coat and armor. People in the arena shouted warnings as I entered with only cloth, bandages, and a damaged sword. The first wave consumed half my mana. I failed to protect the channels in my left arm. The adaptation closed that exact path before the second wave reached it. I walked slowly so the fire received less air. At 50 paces, the temperature doubled. I accepted 11 more records. Their pain hit together. My knees touched the floor. Old burns appeared across my arms as the class translated their causes into protection. Luma pressed both hands against the outside barrier. Bren shouted my remaining pulse to the judges. Nessa spoke the names of the candidates whose failures I used. The crowd repeated each name. That sound reached me through the furnace. At 150 paces, white fire entered my chest. The crown potion broke inside my stomach and closed the damage before my heart stopped. 12 gold vanished in one breath. The adaptation arrived after it. The same mana flame struck again. This time, it divided around my heart. I walked out of the white furnace with no eyebrows, one smoking boot, and a combat rating of 56. The boot merchant fainted from happiness. The second gate mark became gold. The hollow lion waited in a circular chamber beyond it. The beast had no skin. Black armor grew directly over red muscle. Its mouth opened in 4 directions, and each eye watched a different moment. 327 candidates had died in that room. The lion attacked before the furnace door closed. Its tail passed through my guard and broke 2 ribs. It had moved a breath earlier than my eyes saw it. I adapted to the delayed image. The second tail strike met my sword. The blade broke. The audience saw the 2 pieces fall. I had no weapon. The lion's first successful attack could not surprise me again, but it had claws, teeth, armor, false time, and a voice that struck the mind. Every part was a new cause. I accepted the records in small groups. 9 candidates had attacked its front eye. I felt 9 deaths and learned that the eye was bait. 12 had hidden beneath its body. Spines grew there. 21 had targeted the heart and discovered 3 empty chambers. Then I found Halden's ancestor in the archive. He had failed to cut a pale joint behind the lion's lowest jaw. His blade had been too weak by one measure. My next honest attempt inherited twice his effective force. I picked up the broken lower half of my sword. The lion roared. The sound showed me my first death on Earth. A white refrigerator rolled down a ramp while I stood beneath it holding groceries. I almost laughed. The illusion expected terror. It had chosen the wrong memory. That already worked once, I told it. The arena heard me through the trial crystal. Laughter struck the chamber from 60,000 throats. The lion leaped. I let its delayed image pass through me, moved beneath the true head, and drove the broken sword into the pale joint. The inherited force completed the cut Halden's ancestor had begun centuries earlier. One jaw fell. The lion crashed into the wall. I climbed its armor while it turned. My hands found the grain learned from the flamehound. Its tail came from behind, using the same delayed rhythm as before. I stepped aside. The tail struck the false eye. All 4 mouths screamed. The empty heart chambers opened. Behind them waited one small black core. I drove the broken blade through it. The hollow lion fell in front of every viewing crystal in the kingdom. My combat rating rose from 56 to 66. The third gate mark became gold. People in the arena no longer shouted only my name. They shouted the names Nessa had read. Families held old portraits above their heads. Forge workers lifted Halden's red scarves. Even students from rival academies stood before their crystals. Savar watched the reaction with a hard face. "This is why the records were sealed," he said to Luma. "For every Edrin, 1,000 fools will now seek wounds they cannot survive." "Then teach them the price," she replied. "Do not erase the dead." I reached the final seal. It was a white wall with 1,000 handprints. 176 candidates had reached it. None had opened it. Nessa's record was the last. Through the crystal, she met my eyes. Use it. I accepted her failure. For one heartbeat, I was Nessa. I felt teammates bleeding behind me. I felt the crown order her to leave them and place both hands on the seal. She refused. The trial wrapped its broken power around her and used her living body to repair the gate for a century. Her failure had not been weakness. The cause was a seal designed to open only when a candidate abandoned everyone else. My next attempt carried twice the force of her refusal. I placed one hand on the wall. The seal demanded the other. I did not give it. Instead, I pressed Luma's blue cord against the empty handprint. Her mana could not cross the barrier, but the cord had been tied before the trial. Bren's healing mark remained in my bandages. Nessa's graduation chain existed inside the failure I had accepted. Halden's ancestor remained in the force behind my broken sword. I had entered alone. I had not arrived alone. The seal began to crack. Savar stepped forward. Stop. The trial is also the lock on the final gate. It was never meant to be completed. The whole arena heard him. Mavic closed his eyes. Darek lowered his head. The crown had built a graduation test that punished success and fed on failure. Savar raised the royal seal. White force crossed the barrier and struck my back. I fell against the wall. The fourth gate mark went dark. Luma shouted. Guards moved toward Savar, but the royal seal froze them. One city against the world, he said. I will pay that price. His reason was real. So was the attack. The adaptation formed around the exact crown suppression pattern. The next attempt against it received twice the effective force. Savar fired again. The white force touched my back and split around me. It traveled into the seal, found the same royal signature that had built the lock, and returned through his raised hand. The seal shattered. Savar's royal badge broke in front of the kingdom. He dropped to one knee as its stored power vanished. The fourth mark became gold. My combat rating rose from 66 to 71. The ancient reward contract appeared above the arena. It named me the first true graduate of Grey Peak in 1,000 years. 300 gold entered my account. The final gate key formed in my hand. A royal combat license lit beside my name. My remaining wealth rose to 420 gold and 13 silver. The crown sponsorship still promised 5 gold each week. My name returned to the ranking board above every active candidate. The gray title, King of Misfortune, changed color. The voice in my mind told me its first evolution was complete. Hero of the second attempt. Savar remained on one knee beneath the public crystal. The ancient contract forced the chief examiner to certify the result aloud. Edrin, he said, Class King of Misfortune, has passed the 1,000-fall trial with a perfect legal result. The crowd repeated every word. Darek heard it. Rovan heard it. Mavic heard it. Every academy that had laughed at the gray class heard it. Nessa's chain broke and fell from her wrist. For the first time in 100 years, a small cut on her hand began to heal normally. Bren cried. Halden lifted both fists. Luma's shield opened above the arena in a blue field large enough to cover the crowd. The unstable fifth point shook. This time, she held it. I turned toward her through the open gate. She smiled with tears on her face and one hand still pressed against the barrier. Then the cheering stopped. The trial had ended, but the final gate continued opening. Beyond it stood a staircase descending farther than the crystal light could reach. Something enormous moved below. One eye opened in the dark. Around it burned marks from battles no human archive contained. The creature looked at the broken seal, then at me. Its voice reached every witness in the kingdom. You learned from 1,000 failures, it said. So did I.